For decades, the relationship between the United States and Europe has been the cornerstone of the global order, a partnership built on shared values, security alliances, and deep economic ties. But what happens when that partnership is strained, even in crisis? And more importantly, who stands to benefit? As tensions rise between Washington and its European allies, China is seizing the moment, launching an ambitious diplomatic campaign to court Europe. This is not just a story of shifting alliances. It's a glimpse into the machinery that underpins the world economy and how the gears may be realigning before our eyes. Today, the world is watching as China intensifies its efforts to win over European capitals. In recent months, Beijing has ramped up high-level visits, economic forums, and diplomatic overtures across the continent. The context is hard to ignore. Relations between the U.S. and Europe are described by insiders as being in crisis. Political differences, economic disputes, and disagreements over everything from trade policy to defense spending have opened rifts that just a few years ago would have seemed unthinkable. For China, this dysfunction is not just a diplomatic opportunity, it's a market opening. The stakes are enormous. Europe remains one of the world's largest economic blocs, with cutting-edge technologies, wealthy consumers, and global influence. For China, deepening its ties with Europe means more than just friendly headlines. It's about access to markets, investment opportunities, and the chance to shape the rules of international trade. For Europe, greater engagement with China could offer new export destinations, investment, and technological cooperation, potentially reducing its economic dependence on the U.S. at a time when transatlantic reliability is increasingly questioned. To understand why this moment matters, we have to step back and look at the bigger picture. For much of the post-war era, the global order was defined by the dominance of the United States and its close partnership with Western Europe. This was the age of unipolarity. One country, one currency, one set of rules. But the world is changing. China has long argued for a multipolar world, a system where power and influence are more broadly distributed. This vision isn't just ideological, it's deeply pragmatic. By building alliances and diversifying its partnerships, China can reduce its vulnerability to U.S.-led sanctions, tariffs, and technological restrictions. The incentives are clear. Global markets reward efficiency, and both China and Europe are keenly aware of the economic gains that closer cooperation could yield. For China, Europe's advanced manufacturing, green technologies, and luxury markets are too valuable to ignore. For European firms, China's vast consumer base and capital resources present lucrative opportunities. The potential for increased trade, investment, and technological collaboration is significant, especially as both regions look to navigate a more fragmented global economy. But this diplomatic push is about more than just economics. It's also about influence, about who gets to write the rules and set the standards in tomorrow's world. China sees an opening to position itself as a reliable partner to Europe, offering stability and predictable cooperation at a time when U.S. policies can seem erratic or transactional. For Europe, balancing ties between Washington and Beijing is a delicate act. The continent's leaders face mounting pressure to defend their economic interests, while also grappling with concerns over security, human rights, and competition from Chinese firms. The calculus for European countries is complex. On the one hand, diversifying economic partnerships makes sense from the standpoint of efficiency and risk management. Relying too heavily on a single partner, especially one as unpredictable as the U.S., can expose economies to shocks and disruptions. On the other hand, there are real concerns about the political strings that may come attached to deeper integration with China. Issues like data security, intellectual property, and human rights are not easily brushed aside, especially in a region where public opinion and regulatory frameworks play a powerful role. As China steps up its charm offensive, European capitals are weighing their options. Some countries see opportunity in closer ties with Beijing, particularly those with strong export sectors or a history of pragmatic engagement. Others remain wary, mindful of the strategic risks and the need to maintain solidarity with the U.S. on key security issues. The result is a patchwork of responses, some enthusiastic, others cautious, all informed by the realities of market incentives and geopolitical calculations. For China, the logic is straightforward. You're watching Today in Context, where we go beyond the headlines to explain the forces shaping the world around us. If this kind of analysis helps you make sense of the bigger picture, like the video and subscribe for more. By cultivating relationships with European countries, it can hedge against U.S. pressure and reduce its economic vulnerabilities. Diversifying trade and investment channels makes China less dependent on any single market and enhances its leverage in global negotiations. At the same time, Beijing's diplomatic push is designed to present China as a leader in shaping a multipolar world, one where no single country holds all the cards. From a market efficiency perspective, the appeal of a more diversified multipolar system is clear. When power and influence are more evenly spread, economies can respond more flexibly to shocks and opportunities. Trade flows more freely, investment is less constrained by political bottlenecks, and technological cooperation can drive innovation. But the transition from a U.S.-dominated order to a more fragmented system is fraught with risks. The rules of the game are still being written, and the outcomes are far from certain. One of the biggest uncertainties is how receptive Europe will be to China's overtures. While the promise of increased trade and investment is attractive, many European countries remain cautious. Security concerns, especially regarding critical infrastructure and technological dependencies, loom large. Human rights issues continue to cast a shadow over relations, and economic competition from Chinese firms remains a source of tension. The long-term impact on the U.S.-European alliance is also unclear. If European countries tilt too far toward China, it could undermine transatlantic solidarity and weaken the collective bargaining power of the West. On the other hand, if Europe manages to balance its partnerships effectively, it could secure the best of both worlds, diversified economic ties without sacrificing its core alliances. What should we be watching for in the months ahead? First, keep an eye on the diplomatic calendar. High-level visits, economic forums, and new trade agreements between China and European countries will be key indicators of momentum. Joint initiatives in areas like technology, energy, and infrastructure could signal a deepening of ties. At the same time, pay close attention to policy statements from European leaders. Shifts in rhetoric or emphasis, whether toward Beijing or Washington, can provide valuable clues about the direction of travel. It's also worth tracking any changes in U.S.-European relations that could influence China's strategy. If the transatlantic partnership continues to fray, China may double down on its outreach. Conversely, if Washington and Brussels find ways to mend fences and present a united front, China's room for maneuver could narrow. In the end, much will depend on the choices made in European capitals, choices driven by a complex mix of market incentives, security considerations, and political realities. The coming year will be crucial in determining how this diplomatic dance unfolds. For global markets, efficiency remains the guiding principle. States act to maximize their interests, diversify their partnerships, and reduce exposure to risk. As China courts Europe, and as Europe weighs its options, the world is witnessing the practical application of these age-old rules of the game. The push for a multipolar world is not just about grand strategy or ideology. It's about economic opportunity, market access, and the relentless logic of efficiency. China's overtures to Europe are a case study in geopolitical realism, shaped by the incentives and constraints of the global marketplace. The outcome is uncertain, but the stakes could not be higher. As we watch this story unfold, one thing is clear. The global order is not static. It responds to shifts in power, disruptions in alliances, and the ever-changing calculus of economic opportunity. The choices made by China, Europe, and the United States over the coming months will reverberate far beyond the corridors of power. They will shape the flows of trade and investment, the rules of competition, and the very architecture of the world economy. In the end, market efficiency and geopolitical realism are not just abstract concepts. They are the forces driving the decisions of states, the movements of capital, and the future of the global order itself. As China courts Europe amid U.S. dysfunction, the world is reminded that alliances, like markets, are always in motion. And in a world where power is increasingly shared, adaptability and efficiency will be the keys to success. The stories that define tomorrow are already unfolding today. Subscribe to Today in Context for clear, grounded analysis of the events shaping our world, one story at a time.